Hey everybody, Andrew Cooperrider coming at you. I just wanted to give you guys a do my video this week, do my podcast this week, and I figured I'd give you guys a legal update on what's going on with Brewed in the courts as far as it goes. We had a little development here this week. You may have seen a post about it on Brewed, so I wanted to give you guys the update there. Also, as well, I wanted to talk a little bit about this upcoming legislative session. Important bill has been filed, 1137. That's in taxpayer funded lobbying. We'll talk about that and kind of let you guys know what's going on there, what you can expect. Also, as well, Biden has admitted he's failed at something, and we'll kind of talk about that here in a second. But please go ahead and hit the share button if you can, no matter which Facebook page or YouTube channel you're watching this on. Share it out. Feel free to share the link. As always, if you're watching this on a replay, this is in podcast form. For audio only on Spotify and Apple, pretty much anywhere you can get a podcast. And the name of that podcast is Fresh Brewed Politics. And as always, if you want to show us any kind of support for what we're doing, and also, I'm obviously running for office, you can go to Andrew. You can kind of see it down there in the left-hand corner, Andrew4ky.com, Andrew4ky.com to go ahead and get that information to you. And otherwise, I will dig into it. Like I said, please hit the share button and let's go on. If you guys can't hear me or anything else, just let me know. So, Brewed, what's going on with our case? So for those of you who are unaware, what occurred about a year ago, obviously Brewed stayed open. Two things happened. The health department came in and took away our food license because, whatever. And the ABC board, the State Alcohol Beverage Control Board, so that's who issues alcohol license at the state level, which, by the way, in my general opinion, is one of the more useless organizations. I'll tell you why. Locally, see locales like Lexington set their own rules. They set when you can serve, they set whether or not they even serve in the area. I mean, you got towns like Wilmore here in Kentucky that don't even allow alcohol. They're dry towns. And so it's all administered locally by the local police departments. In this case, in Lexington, the local police department handles a lot of it. But it's all administered locally. And the state alcohol board literally only has 4 or 5 people. And they are a redundant organization, in my opinion, having been in the industry. Obviously, they're there to kind of protect the 3-tier system we have in Kentucky, to make sure they're getting their taxes too. It's more of a tax collection service. But also, they found new use during the 2020 time of enforcing Beshear's edicts by threatening to take away the state issued licenses to drink. And so what we saw is people were facing those kinds of problems. In fact, an open records request revealed that around 300 bars and restaurants and liquor stores were facing some sort of warnings or some sort of enforcement to deal with the Beshear's mandates during 2020 from ABC, though Brewed's the only one they have taken, as far as we can tell, this far. And so what occurred is they came in and they took our liquor license. And once we got back our food license, which is done by the local health department, which just doesn't have the same deep pockets the state has, they don't have the time, wherewithal, and also the PR worries to be dealing with this. So what ended up happening is we got our food license back like 3 weeks later. But our alcohol license was taken away. And it was gone for about a month or 2 or so. And then we filed in court saying that an emergency hearing with the Sixth Circuit saying, listen, they are causing damage because they're not returning my alcohol license to me. I can't sell alcohol. And for that reason, they're causing damage for pending litigation. And that would mean they would have to go under oath in a situation they don't get to control first to go through and litigate this case. And they didn't want that. So what they went ahead and did is they gave us back our liquor license, our alcohol license. In fact, they even paid for our renewal fees, I believe, which was fantastic. And so they just renewed my license, all good to go. And so, but that didn't stop the enforcement from them trying to take it away. So they still wanted to take Brewed's license. And this is where it gets a little interesting. So guys, please hit that share button so everybody can understand how corrupt the governmental systems are here in Kentucky. Okay. So what happens next? Well, what happened next is that the ABC board started moving against us to take away our license, which created an administrative hearing process. Okay. Now, the administrative hearings are mostly, normally they're followed, but they're kind of sort of for show. So an administrative hearing goes on, and it goes in front of an actual judge, and it's kind of like a bench hearing, if you guys know what that is, for an emergency injunction. And basically a judge is kind of the jury, or whatever you want to call it, and just allows people to present their cases, and then issues in this case, an administrative hearing, a recommendation. The reason why it's a recommendation is because there is no statute in the state of Kentucky that says they have to follow it at all. They can go through the administrative hearing process. If the administrative hearing process doesn't come out the way that the ABC board wants it to go, they can just turn around then and go to court and take it from you anyways. The administrative hearing really is just supposed to kind of provide a semblance of fairness that doesn't really exist. It's to create a system that shows that the state government is trying its hardest to not take licenses from people who don't deserve it, supposedly. It's completely corrupt. It makes no sense. So what happened in our situation is the case happens, and the state presents a epidemiology expert from the state that turns out never ever treated patients that were sick with, the thing, and also doesn't have a lot of first world experience, was literally just repeating whatever they were told to do. And that was the best person they could find to be their expert witness. Meanwhile, we brought forward an expert witness. That was Dr. Molly Rutherford, who has her master's in epidemiology, studied under Dr. Fauci, is a general practitioner doctor now, actively treating hundreds of cases of the thing, and like I said, high-trained epidemiologist. And what it was about was whether or not, what was up for question, what they're taking my license on, was saying that my business being open during the time it was open represented a public health risk. So there is law in the state of Kentucky that says they can take away an ABC license if you're representing a risk to the public. And so they are saying, well, Brewed was representing a health risk to the public, and so we want to take away their license. And so they listened to the argument from the state epidemiologist, our epidemiologist doctor that we present, and they kind of duke it out a little bit, not directly, but there's definitely variance of opinions on how effective the actual mandates had been. And one of the things that, and we live stream the case, so you can watch it on Brewed's Facebook page, because we live stream the case. And one of the interesting parts was when it got to a point where the question was asked, do you believe Beshear did everything he possibly could to prevent deaths? And the reason why this is important is, if you remember, mid-December, Beshear lifted the indoor dining ban. And so the question that came up was, what is this? There was no statistical difference between the middle of November, the end Thanksgiving-ish time of November, and December time. In fact, December is a little bit higher. There was no difference in concerns and data and worry. There's no new data, no new studies, nothing for him new to make a new decision on. But yet, we were open at 50% over Christmas. We were not open at 50% over Thanksgiving. And so the challenge is if you believe, as an epidemiologist that works for the state, that he did everything right, why were they closed indoor dining in November, and why were they open to indoor dining in December? And of course, they didn't have an answer for it. It's fantastic. I encourage you to go back and watch it. Might take some cuts. It is quite clear that this have been firing from the hip mandates from the go, and the epidemiologist knows that. That's testifying for the state. And our epidemiologist comes on and goes, look, it's quite clear that these lockdowns weren't working based on the data, based on everything I did when I worked for the NIH and I was directly working for Fauci. These kinds of lockdown suggestions would have never occurred. And that was some good testimony there. And I encourage you to go back and watch it. And so the hearing goes on, the administrative hearing happens, and it took a few months. You file briefs, things like that. I believe our attorney fees on this was like $4,000 or $5,000 for the entire process. And they then go back and forth and they the judge issues a recommendation. In this case, the judge issues a recommendation that pretty much says, look, it is clear that that this stuff, the heart of some other past legislation and everything else, they don't want you continue enforcing those mandates. And so you shouldn't be doing that, mixed with he's got some points, meaning Andrew at Brewed, their case, they've got some points that they're making. And also he acted in kind of a reasonable manner, considering the situation, considering you didn't give him a chance to contact lawyer, considering the situation they did stop serving, considering that there was court to be litigated where things were kind of up in the air on what some of these mandates meant. So it was kind of reasonable. Yes, he maybe acted badly in some ways or some other ways. So the judge was pretty much like, okay, how about this? You don't have to admit that you were wrong, and we'll just take the 2 months that Brewed didn't have its license and say that's its punishment. So basically, we couldn't sue the ABC board for lost revenue for the 2 months that we had our license removed, but that was going to be the only quote unquote punishment. Pretty much those 2 months of his license removed, that's his punishment. Otherwise, we go forward, we put it behind us. Let's move on. But no, Beshear has other plans. And so what has happened over the last couple of days, that hearing was issued, and the ABC, pending they've filed an appeal the recommendation directly to the circuit court, and they're saying we're going to take Brewed's ABC license anyways. Even though a judge has already recommended we don't, even though after presenting all the evidence, we were told not to do it, we don't actually have to follow that judge because it's all for show anyways. This is actual state statute that the director of the organization, ABC, has complete say-so over this. And of course, it's a political appointee. And so they've decided they need to take us into the Lexington, courts here to continue to try to remove our license, even after a judge has already issued a recommendation on it. And that is going in front of the director. Now, of course, we have some responses. The director has to sign off on that. There's no doubt they will. And it is quite clear that they will try to remove this anyway. So basically, they lost the administrative hearing, and so now they're going into real court to try to take it. Now, most of the time, 99% of the time when they lose an administrative hearing, they move on with their lives. But not me, no, because I dared to challenge them in the first place. So because of that, they're going to move forward. And, I can't reveal too much. You never reveal your legal strategies, but I can just tell you that if they think this is over, it is far from over. If Beshear thinks this is over, it's far from over. He's going to be surprised to see how much fight this dog still has in him over this. I'm not going to give it up without a fight. At this point, too, it's purely the principle of the matter. And, quite frankly, I think we're going to see quite a lot of developments on this that they are not too happy with. And if I were them, I would back off right now. And I just say, you know what, whatever, we'll go with the judge's recommendation. But they've decided they want to open up a Pandora's box and see how far we're willing to take it. Well, we all know how far I'm willing to take things. And so we'll see what happens there. But obviously, as we go through these things, guys, we need your support. You can donate to my political campaign, andrew4ky.com. You can buy some coffee from Brewed, brewedco.com, brewedco.com. You can come into the shop. Doing those kinds of things helps support us, helps us pay our lawyer fees when you come to the shop or buy online, or supports the campaign to make some permanent changes, because this ties into when we talk about the state legislator. You say, Andrew, how does this tie into state legislator? Well, first, we can change the law because it's a Kentucky revised statute that allows these people to take a license even after an administrative hearing has said otherwise and said, no, you can't do that. But also as well, what it gives us the ability to do is there was a nice little bill back in 2020 called HB 360. And this was a bill that was sponsored by Beckler, Baker, Bratcher, Bray, Callaway, Dossett, Dotson, Fisher, Pfister, Hart, Maddox, Rayborn, Sheldon, Tate, and Thomas, all representatives, and they sponsored HB 360, which would have directed any individual or business penalized by business license restrictions or fines under the governor's emergency response to the thing shall have their, sorry, we're on Facebook and I know they downgrade things when you say certain words, shall have their licenses restored and fines refunded. So pretty much the state legislator had a bill that would have completely deadened its tracks, ended this type of situation we're in right now, where we're facing having to continue a year later to fight to keep our liquor, our beer license with this state. A year later, we're still fighting over it. And the state legislature had a bill that would end this dead in its tracks, with HB 360, not only for me, but the 300 or so other businesses and restaurants that were facing fines, that even possibly settled out because they just didn't want to deal with it, that were facing interactions. I mean, guys, when you read the open records request from the ABC on what they were doing as far as enforcing these mandates, it's gross. And they're sitting there staking out places and sitting there attacking general organizations. And it turns into, one was, funny enough, is 2 strip clubs up in Louisville. And one, or not, maybe it was a strip club. And one strip club had to be shut down, but the other strip club was secretly remaining open. So the other strip club was turning in the other strip club. And it's crazy. Some of this stuff is crazy. And this simple law, HB 360, passed, would have put an end to all of it and would have fulfilled the promise that many state legislators made to all of us, specifically looked me dead in the eye in front of a room of several hundred people and said they would take care of this. I specifically had asked several of them, what are you going to do to fight for my license, to help me fight back against Beshear? You say you support me. What are you going to do in the state legislature to make sure that I get to keep my business? And some of the people who told me they'd fight for me sponsored this bill. Baker, Maddox, Rayborn, for an example. They sponsored this bill, which would have done it. But some of the people who said they would fight for me, nowhere to be seen. And the reason why this bill didn't go forward was, simply put, there was a representative, and that representative decided, you know what? I don't want to help lawbreakers. That was what they literally said. They said, I don't want lawbreakers. I don't want them to be rewarded, I think was the exact term that this individual used, or it's rewarding lawbreakers. The same people that all these legislators said they were running to help protect, and they were on the side of, and they had no problem going and pretending to get behind them, the same people suddenly now became lawbreakers for one individual, not because they actually cared about everybody else, but it's mainly because they hated me at that point, because I'd made it so hard for them in the legislature, because I was calling them out for all their BS, and it got to a point where they didn't want me to have any wins at all. They wanted me to suffer under Beshear's push because I had made them suffer so much for being bad legislators. And so Steve Rudy was the representative at District 1, and he said that he didn't want to see that bill pass because it was rewarding lawbreakers. So it wasn't brought to the floor by Rudy. And so there you go. That is something that happened in the state legislature that simply a change in our state legislature can help address and change. And that is why we need to see long-term, long-lasting change here in Kentucky. And we do that in the state legislature because, once again, that's a perfect example where people like myself who are facing tyranny, and I might be the only one still facing it, we haven't found anybody else, are dealing with this. And it's quite ridiculous. Speaking of corruption and terribleness, I wanted to talk about BR 1137 for a second, get off talking about Brewed and talking about failure of legislators to help protect the very restaurants and business owners they promised to, and they're running for election 2020. That's the other thing too. This in 2022, when you guys are going into that primary ballot box, and please show up in the primaries, you got to. Don't blindly vote for anybody. Even if you need to do a quick research, ask for a sample ballot before you go in and research every single name on that ballot and really pick who you're going to vote for. Don't just vote for them willy-nilly. Just literally research them, please. Okay, please. Now, BR 1137 has been filed by Felicia Rayborn. What this would do would ban something called taxpayer-funded lobbying. And I'll give you a perfect example. In the year 2021, Louisville and Jefferson County metro government, I'm not kidding you, the actual Louisville and Jefferson County metro government. So this is like the city council in the year 2021. And this, they haven't reported yet for this last quarter. So I expect this to go up by a little bit. So it should actually go up to right around about, I would say probably closer to 55,000, has spent $38,400 paying private lobbyists to lobby our state government on behalf of Louisville and Jefferson County metro government. Here's what's so odd here, okay? How many representatives does Louisville have? They've got several state senators. They got several House reps. Is it not the job of those senators and House reps to represent the city of Louisville and their interests in the state legislature? If the mayor of Louisville or the mayor of Lexington spends money on this too, wants something, or the city council needs funding or needs something, why are they having to pay a private citizen to talk to the government that is supposed to represent them? Do you not think they could just contact them and let them know? But no, we've got to make sure we scratch the back of our good private buddy friends that had made a career in politics, had gotten out, and now are making a career off of the fact that people take their calls. And the city, that's just Louisville and Jefferson County metro government. What's even worse is if we go in and we look, who else had given Louisville and Jefferson County metropolitan sewer. This is the sewer system, okay? The sewer system for over the last year, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Over the last year has spent around another $50,000 so far lobbying the state government, paying out to a private individual your tax dollars to the state government so they can get more of your tax dollars. It's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And it's part of the problem too, because it's this I scratch your back, you scratch mine, weird circle of how we're all going to get rich off the taxpayer's dime. And it's wrong and it's morally corrupt. And they're not even the worst offenders. So what this bill would do is if you receive over, I believe, over, I think it is 25% or 15% of your budget. It might be, don't quote me on that. But if you receive over a certain amount of your budget from state government, you are not allowed to lobby the state government. Basically, you're not allowed to take my tax dollars, then lobby the state government to get more tax dollars, which that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm in big support of. And I hope this bill passes this year, but of course, this is going to be one of the hardest bills to pass, and it's going to be a huge process. Why? Because nobody up there wants it to pass. The cities don't want it to pass because, well, they feel like they need the lobbyists because the representatives have stopped doing their job. The representatives don't want it to pass because, well, they like the lobbyists, make them feel special, and the lobbyists are the ones who have their ears anyways, and lobbyists are going to be like, look, man, you're going to put me out of a job. You're not going to put your friend Frank out of a job, right? So they don't want it to pass. The only people who want it to pass is the giant electorate. And unless we start getting involved in, once again, showing up the primaries and donating to and taking care of the people who are making the strong stances on our behalfs, we will never get this bill passed. Because all the people with deep money in pockets that have no problem dumping thousands of dollars into elections are the people who don't want that bill to pass. Because that's what they do, right? They don't want it to pass. And so if we don't start giving and if we don't start helping out candidates and that's maybe knocking doors and at least showing up and voting in the primaries and so on, we don't start doing those things, this kind of bill is never going to pass. And it's gross. It's just, we're talking millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars of your tax dollars being spent every year into the into pockets of private lobbyists to talk to their own state government who have representatives that are supposed to represent them anyways, right? It's crazy and it's ridiculous and it needs to be gone away with. And so that's why I support HB 1137. I hope you guys do too, and I hope you can see why it's important. If you have any questions about it, you can message me, email me. You can email me at Andrew@Cooperrider, Cooperrider, the number 4ky.com. You can send me an email there. And as always, guys, remember, this is in podcast form, so you can listen to this to the audio only. If you want to listen to it later on, you can also hit the share button for me. We're going to talk about Biden admitting he made a mistake. Recently, Biden admitted when he was dealing with the thing, you know, the thing, we all know the thing. When I say the thing, we know what we're talking about. I'm live streaming on Facebook right now, and Facebook has some trigger words, but Biden has admitted that there is no federal response to what we're going through. He's finally admitted it. Now, if you remember, during the campaign, he said he was going to shut it all, not shut down the country, but shut down the sickness. He was going to shut it down. He was going to end it. And remember, they blamed Trump for all the deaths. Now, we've seen more deaths under Biden than we have under Trump. And then also as well, what we've seen is the same thing that Trump was saying the entire time that Biden was saying these things. And one of the main reasons Biden got elected is because he claimed the federal government was going to come in and save the day. What he's realized is the federal government can't do much. In fact, they kind of suck at everything. He's admitted he should have bought more testing. This is what he's admitting. He should have bought more test kits, as we're now all scrambling for test kits, supposedly. And he should have bought more, and he's failed to do it. Now, I don't necessarily know if we need a whole lot of testing is the answer. Some people say asymptomatic testing is actually a negative and is not helping us. But more importantly, I remember when being sold that we get out of this if we just do X, Y, and Z. And of course, those of us who had any kind of thought process knew that we live in a world, not just a country. And we also knew that sicknesses travel worldwide. And in knowing that, and because we know that, we knew that unless everybody simultaneously, even if something existed that immediately could make everybody immune right away, everybody would have to take it at the exact same time in order for it to be taken care of. And we knew that was a possibility. And what we have to do is get this to be what Tennessee has called it, a managed health situation. Where, yes, we have to make sure we're managing our healthcare systems properly. Maybe that means we're not firing people because they refuse to take a medical treatment. Don't know. Call me crazy. That we shouldn't be getting rid of medical staff when we so desperately need them. But we're managing our medical situations. We're watching to make sure we have proper medical staffing. We're making sure that maybe we start removing things like certificate of need laws to allow our hospitals to expand better and be better prepared. Maybe we help with ensuring we have enough PPE or things like that if you believe that's necessary. But it's come quite clear that mandating this away is not going to happen. It's never going to happen. You know, people can take any medical treatments they want, and I believe they have the right to do that. However, I do not believe a person should be mandated by anybody to do it, especially when the argument of it's for your community has left and gone out the window. The argument of you're doing it for your neighbor went when we have more spread, not less, since everybody's been taking the treatment. And that alone has shown that, if anything, it may help you individually. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. More specifically, I'm not your doctor. And if you're asking me for medical advice, we've gone way too far. I'm a small business owner. I'm a family man. I'm certainly not a doctor, and I'm certainly not somebody who you should be individually making your medical decisions based upon. You should be doing your own research and talking to your doctor, talking through the research you've done, and make your own decision. Make an educated decision. One that the information isn't being censored from either. I do believe that's important. If we are censoring information, that is equally as bad as forcing you to do something, because if not worse, because you're not able to make a truly informed decision. And so if you have the information you need and you feel comfortable making it, that is absolutely what you should do. You should take it. You should not take it. You should do whatever after you're informed and you talk to your doctor fully. Make sure your doctor's informed on everything you're informed on. Have a honest discussion with them about it. You make your decision. But nobody should be forcing you, whether that's me, as a business owner and you happen to be an employee of mine, or if that's the federal or state government. Nobody should be doing that. I'm very much against it, and it's proven that it doesn't have any kind of help for the community. And the minute that has occurred, and there's a weird thing going on where some people still believe it, even though they've come out and admitted that maybe it doesn't really slow the spread a whole lot. But the weird thing is that gets rid of this moral idea that mandating it is a good moral thing to do. There's some argument that somehow existed before this. Because if you can spread it to others, it has no bearing on my health, whether or not you do something or not. And so what Biden's admitting, and I think this is lost on some people, is that they realize they cannot mandate their way out of this. They're not going to get to 0 cases. It's not going to happen. And the only thing they can do is allow people to make their own decisions. At least I hope that's where Biden's landing. But I'm afraid that won't be the case. I'm afraid that we'll see a mandate to fly get handed down. And I'm afraid to see that because we've seen this cycle. A mandate gets proposed by normally the media in their asking of questions of Biden or Fauci or somebody. And they say something like, well, you mandate it to fly in a plane. And they will pretend like they don't know, they got to study it, but they won't say yes or no. And then steadily over time, they'll get asked it more because the media is helping them. And they will answer it and indicating it's more likely to occur and to happen. And then that way it's prepping us to accept when they put in place a mandate to fly, for an example, that we are just expecting to see it coming. So we just accept it. Now, I think that's going to be an interesting thing because we've seen what happens when they try to mandate it to pilots and airline workers. And so I'm curious to see how you're going to justify mandating it to travelers when it's not mandated for staff. And I'm curious to see what occurs there. Now, of course, the airlines, if they're going to get bailed out by the federal government, their incentive is to listen to the federal government, not to their customers. So I'm curious to see what happens. So I will take notice of one thing that's very important. And that is this. As we're seeing a lot of flight cancellation delays across the country, there's one airline that is just a couple airlines, but one in particular that came to mind. And, you know, a lot of you may know, I know some people that work for said airline that is not having the same cancellation issues, and that's Southwest. And Southwest isn't having the same cancellation issues, partially because they are a little bit more prepared. They're paying double, triple overtime to allow people to come in. They are able to cover those shifts a little bit better. They've worked a little bit harder at restaffing because they had their issue with staffing before. But also keep in mind, Southwest had an issue regarding mandating. When they mandated it, and suddenly a lot of flights suddenly started going under. In fact, most things indicate that Southwest may have the lowest rate of treatment, we'll call it, for the sensors, of treatment when compared to the other airlines. Magically, though, as this new variant is sweeping across the country, Southwest isn't being that affected. Maybe they've learned and they're covering things better, or maybe just simply put, they're better staff because they're not mandating it. And a lot of the other airlines have lost staff to Southwest who hasn't mandated it. And so they're able to be a more reliable airline now compared to the others. When I asked the airline employees that I know from several airlines, what do you think the issue is? They said mandating definitely has a portion of it. See, some of them, like United, who had mandated it pretty much the harshest, I believe, they have yet to recover staffing wise from their mandate, and it caught up to them because they assumed that if they mandated it, they wouldn't have to have, see, they're functioning on, when they're mandating it, they're functioning on a scientific belief that if more of our staff have taken it, less will need to be quarantined, less will need to be set aside, and we will be able to continue on more. However, that's not what occurred. Maybe your staff are getting better outcomes from taking it. Like I said, who knows? Well, some people know, and you can look at the data and make your own choices. But maybe they're getting better outcomes, but that's not stopping them from still having to do the quarantine protocols because they're still catching it and spreading it. And that is the reason why they were on board before with mandating is they thought, well, what will happen for us is it'll less of our staff will catch it and spread it. We'll have less people in quarantine. We'll be better off than the other airlines. But it turns out not to be the case. In fact, it turns out that the airlines are realizing they've been not lied to, but maybe misrepresented what the outcome would be compared to if they'd mandated it and not before. And this had led to the pressure now that's on the CDC. See, the CDC had changed their quarantine guidelines from 10 days down to 5, cut it in half, not because there was necessarily a brand new study that showed tons of data that told them they could reduce it down to 5. That didn't exist. They'll admit it. It was due to pressure of staffing shortages and how 10-day quarantine times were too difficult with the level of staffing shortages. See, what they were really saying was, look, we told all these companies that if we would issue guidelines that meant, and if they went and took out the treatment, they would not have to quarantine as much. They would make more money. They wouldn't have as many staffing shortages. They'd be better off. And that's what we told them. And now they're not, and they're mad about it. And the only way we can make them happy now is if we cut our quarantine time in half. Now, you're going to fall in this issue one in two ways. Due to the fact there's been no major study or anything else, there's only two ways you can look at this. One is you believe the quarantine time should still be 10 days. You cannot not trust the CDC because they have just crumpled to pressure from the outside, from employers, saying that, hey, we can't work with this. So the CDC magically just redefined how long the disease is supposedly contagious. Or you're looking at it on the other side of things and saying, look, if it's 5 days, regardless of anything, and if we're getting the pressure because of staffing shortages, that shows that mandating it is not going to relieve our employment issues. And instead, we should be treating it a little more like we do some other diseases when it comes down to symptomatic or not. That's really the only two ways you can kind of fall on this when you look at that. I don't know how anybody can look at what the CDC did with the lack of data and agree with it and look at it that had priorly agreed with the CDC, look at it and agree. It doesn't make sense. You can't hold those two beliefs at the same time. At least I don't think you can. But thank you guys for joining me. Once again, please share with others. Let people know we're out here. Once again, you can watch this podcast form of Fresh Brewed Politics on Spotify and Apple, all of them. You can also check it out on the YouTube. And please also as well, check out the campaign, Andrew, 4ky.com. We're getting to near the end of the quarter. We got 2 days. It's December 29th. We got like 2 days left. So please crack open those wallets, go to Andrew4ky.com and toss a couple bucks my way. We definitely need it if we're going to win in the 12th. Thanks.